Jaya, good? Give me. D. Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravijikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravijikacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the mind is, or when the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 30th day of October, 2023, in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Dravida Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 7, The Science of God, Chapter 2, Hiranyakashipu, King of the Demons, Text 22. Nitya Atma Vyayaha Shuddhaha Sarvagaha Sarvavit Paraha Datte Asav Atmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Sarvaga Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Sarvagak Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Sarvagak Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Sarvagak Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Janmana. Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Avagak Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Sarvagak Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha Sarvagak Sarvavit Paraha Datte Savatmano Lingam Mayaya Visrajan Gunan. Anyone online?
Hare Krishna. Nitya Atma Ya Shuddha
Nitya Atma Vyayakshuddha
Sarvaga Sarvavit Para
Sarvaga Sarvavit Paraha
Dhatyasva Atmano Lingam
Tate Savatmano Lingam
Ayaya Vishrajan Gunan
Maya Visajan Gunan Nityaha eternal Atma spirit soul Avyayaha inexhaustible Shuddhaha with no material tinge Sarvagaha qualified to go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. Sarvavit full of knowledge. Paraha transcendental to material conditions. Datte accepts. Asau that Atma or living being. Atmanaha of the self. Lingam a body. Mayaya by the material energy. Visrajan creating. Gunan various material qualities. Sri Hiranyakashipu continued. Yeah, 2 verses back. Sri Hiranyakashipu Vacha. Telling you. The spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body. But because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. I'm sorry? Oh, I don't know. Does anyone know which Hiranyakashipu was? I think he's. Yeah. That's what it seems to be. Purport. Hiranyakashipu very intelligently described the position of the soul. The soul is never the body, but is always completely different from the body. Being eternal and inexhaustible, the soul has no death. But when the same pure soul desires to enjoy the material world independently, he is placed under the conditions of material nature and must therefore accept a certain type of body and suffer the pains and pleasures thereof. This is also described by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, 13:22. Karanam guna sangosya sadasadjoni janmasu. The living entity is born in different families or species of life because of being infected by the modes of material nature. When conditioned by material nature, the living entity must accept a certain type of body, which is offered by nature under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Ishwarak savabhutanam riddesher janatishtati brahmayan savabhutani yantrarudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. Bhagavad Gita 18:61. It's made of the material energy, and it's also made by the material energy. The same word is in the Maya is there in the translation. She provides it with her own energy. The body is just like a machine, and according to the living entity's karma, he is offered a particular type of machine to move here and there under the control of material nature. This continues until he surrenders to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mam eva ye papadyante, mayam etang tarantite. Until he surrenders, the conditioned soul is carried from life to life by the arrangement of material nature. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmilitam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So I find it interesting that Prabhupada in his purport, or in his translation, as you may know by reading Prabhupada's books, he sometimes puts some purport in the translation. In the 5th canto, especially you find that. So here he's put some purport in the 5th canto. In the translation, he has Hiranyakashipu saying, therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. But what has he just done? He's gotten all of his subordinates to go burn all the Brahmins' houses and persecute the devotees because he thinks that'll mess up the demigods, and the demigods are the ones who appealed to Krishna, who appeared as Varaha, who killed his brother, right? So he blames the Vishnu when he plays the devotees. But here he's saying there's no need to lament. Well, he didn't actually say that. Prabhupada put it in the translation. If you look in the Sanskrit, he's not saying that. But the conclusion of what he is saying here is that one should not lament. In other words, he's completely contradictory. He wants to pacify his nephews, right? And that was his brother's children, and his sister-in-law also, his wife, Hiranyaksha's wife. So therefore, how else can you pacify but preaching what Krishna preaches in the Bhagavad Gita? I remember when my father died in '87, so it's back. I went to the funeral, and to console my mother, I was basically Dehi, I was convincing her that he really didn't die, that he was gone on, and it was a tremendous relief to her. As we heard, I think recently in a class, someone who heard that, was it on Sankirtan or something? Yeah. So that's that's the A of the ABCs of Krishna consciousness. Krishna preaches in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, but it's tremendously revolutionary. In other words, when you think about it, if you're convinced, if you actually believe and you think it's the absolute truth that we don't die and we're never born, we have life after life according to our karma, that changes it should change the whole calculation of your life. What you should strive for. It doesn't make any sense to strive for things material which you're just going to leave behind. In other words, a complete waste of time, the Shrama Evahi Kevalam, of what everyone is doing. Working in Yasyatma Buddhi Kunabeti Datake, identifying with the body, and then the extensions of the body, the family, the business, the race I'm born in, the land I'm occupying, right? There's wars going on because of land, because this is my land, right? Whether it's Ukraine or Israel, is all about land, right? That's Boma Ijidi. It's in that same verse. To worship the land you were born in as something nationalism. It's all ignorance based on the bodily concept of life. So as soon as you understand that this is, the body now is one short chapter in a very long book, and it's going to end, and I'm going to go on to another life. What is the point? What is the point of focusing on the body and the relationships and everything? This is Maya's illusion that she casts over us, the net. We wanted it because we need that if we want to forget Krishna. If we want to try to rebel against Krishna and try to be Krishna, be the enjoyer and the controller, that's what it's all about. So we need to be in illusion and forgetfulness. But what's the result? A lot of pain, a lot of suffering. The material energy provides, I don't think I said it. Oh my God. See, I'm getting old. Oh, did I do Om Jnana Timirandasya? Let me do that, just to make sure. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakya Chakshu Unminitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and all members of Sri Parampara. Hare Krishna. So, actually it's very pertinent. In other words, we're all born in the darkness of ignorance, and unless we come in touch with a spiritual master, may not be exalted as Prabhupada, but it's someone who can be our instructing guru, or take a book and it's Prabhupada directly, who can enlighten us out of this illusion we've been living in since time immemorial. Then we're doomed to suffer in this world. And it's a real tragedy because we all have this human form of life, and it's the only juncture that provides a means to get out of this cycle of birth and death and this illusion. And so if we just waste it in the animal propensities, it's a great tragedy. And that's why all the great acharyas like Srila Prabhupada have this tremendous preaching mood, because with the realization, the complete realization of Krishna, comes this sense of compassion, this sense of empathy. You see, Krishna, there's a wonderful, many of you know these verses in the Bhagavad Gita, the 10:8 to 11, which is the essential 4 verses, 8, 9, 10, 11. The last one, Krishna is describing how he enlightens us from within the heart. How does it begin? Tesham eva nakampat. Thank you. Tesham eva nakampatam mahama jnana jamtamaha nashyam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena bhasvata. Now the previous verse is also similar. Tesham sutata yuktanam bhajatam pritipur dadami buddhi yogatam yena mamapi antite. To those who are always worshipping me. And I always think that he's describing that worship in the first verse. Machita, magata prana, bodhiyanta. They put their mind on me, they dedicate their life energy to me. And they're always meeting with each other and glorifying me, you know, and enjoying spiritual happiness and getting nourishment, spiritual nourishment. Tushanti charamanti. So then the next verse is, so the first verse, he just says, I am the source of everything. Basically, he answers the question in the Brahma Sutra, the Tata Brahma Jigyasa, where does everything come from? We should be curious about that. And the second sutra answered, Janma Yasya Yataha. You know. But who is that? So Krishna says, I am that. I am the source of everything. Everything's coming from me. The wise who know this will worship me with all their heart. How? Machita Magata Prana. It all follows very logically. They think of me, they absorb in me, machita, and then they serve me. It's not just a meditation. Gata prana, prana is your life energy and all of your senses and everything that's working by the life energy. But gata prana, it's gone to me. In other words, it's dedicated their lives to me. And how do they act? They glorify me, especially together. Bodhiyantak parasparam, just what we're doing. Coming together, glorifying Krishna, and enjoying spiritual happiness that way. So, and then what's his response? To those who are always worshiping me in this way, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. But then the last verse, he more or less expands on that theme from the third verse. Tesham ev anukampartam. Now this word anukampa means out of compassion for them, right? But what is that? Just think about this word a minute. Kampa is one of the ecstatic symptoms, right? It's trembling. It's like, you know, in ecstasy. So anukampa means to tremble following someone else in response to someone else. Anu is to follow, you know. So Krishna is feeling compassion for us and he's trembling a little bit. You know, that's what the meaning of anukampa means. Out of his deep compassion for us, he destroys the darkness in our heart with the light of knowledge. You know, so it's a wonderful. You know, those verses are very important. So, but until and unless we meet someone, we come in touch with someone who can enlighten us, who can break through the barrier that we've built by turning away from Krishna. You know, that's the same verse I always quote all the time. That fear arises as soon as you turn away from Krishna and get absorbed in the dualities of this material world. You remember that verse near the end of the 7th chapter? Yesham dvandakatam papam jananam punyakamante dvandva mohanir mukta bhajante mam jadhavata. That one has to be free of sins and sinful reactions. And tesham tu antagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam, simply performing pious activity, which in this case means activities of devotional service. Te dvandva mohanir mukta. They alone can become free from the delusion of duality. It's a delusion of duality. Oh, this is pleasurable, this is painful, let me go for that. I'm really going to work for that, you know. But it's all the duality of material energy. If you're going for one, you're going to get the other. You know, if you're going for material pleasure, you're going to get a lot of material pain. At least you're going to get birth, death, old age, and disease. But we know there's all these threefold miseries, you know, on top of that. So, the interesting thing here, you know, is that Hiranyakashipu, as we know, is Jaya Vijay. He's coming from that plane, but he's, you know, in the present incarnation, he seems to be completely wrapped up because he can't really be a good fighter, you know, with Nrsingadev. He can't be sincere unless he really believes he's a demon and that this, you know, that I own everything in the universe and so forth. In other words, he's got to be convinced. So that's what he is. But when he needs to console the nephews and his sister-in-law, of his brother, that was killed, then he has to preach the eternal philosophy. It sounds like he's speaking from the Bhagavad Gita here, right? Which always was remarkable. And I pointed out to Maharaj, I never noticed before, that he gets the Sri Hiranyakashipu Vacha, which is pretty funny, isn't it? And I said, oh, maybe, Maharaj thought the same thing I thought. Oh, maybe it's because he's going to speak, the eternal philosophy. He's quoting the Bhagavad Gita. So I looked at another point where he's just speaking. He's like berating Prahlad, and in other words, he's not speaking that. Still, Sri Hiranyakashipu Vacha. So I said, is this just a standard thing? So I looked for a place where Kamsa speaks, He doesn't seem to get Uvacha at all, the Uvacha line. It's all just in the previous verse, Kamsa said this, and the next verse he's quoting Kamsa. Anyway, I'll do some more research, but it's interesting how, this Sri, because it's honoring, But here, just the substance of his verse here, and Prabhupada expands on it, he has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. That's basically the theme of the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. Those 20 verses, there's a lesson in the second chapter, from 11 through 30, a lesson on the soul, which is the foundation of everything. And perhaps the most quoted verse in there is Najayate Mriyate Va Kadachan, which is very much like an Upanishadic verse. And Prabhupada quotes the Upanishads in the purport. It's a very similar verse. So, Najayate Mriyate Va Kadachan Nayam Bhutva Bhavitava Nabuya. So the first line, Najayate Mriyate. It never has any birth, never has any death, And it doesn't come into being. In other words, we're eternal. And that's Aja, we're unborn. All the living entities have already existed, infinity, you can't count them. But it's not like there are new ones being generated and other ones dying. No, you don't die and you're not generated. We're eternal, back and forth. So that's really hammered home in the third line. The second line, third line, is Aja, Nitya, Shashvata, Yam Purana. As far as I can tell, the word Nitya means eternal, and so does Shashvata. It's almost redundant, But he's just hammering home. We're unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. The soul is not slain when the body is slain. And if you really believe that, if you accept that as the truth, it should change everything in your life. What's the point of striving? It only makes sense to strive if this is one life, right? It used to be, I don't know, you only go around once in life. It was a beer commercial or something, so you get all the gustos. That's the conclusion. If you only go around once, then you might as well have as much sense gratification as possible, right? But you don't go around once. And if you try to get as much sense gratification as possible, you're going to suffer like anything. Just read the end of the 5th chapter. Cast away all, restraints, as much illicit sex, intoxication as you can grab. That was basically the ethos of the hippies, 60s revolution, But it's tremendous suffering, both in this life and the next life. It's just horrible. I remember, I've been here for so long. The first place, no, not the first place, but after the first place I lived in '89 was with the Bhakti Godhead. Bhakti Godhead was here. Jayawada Swami was here. Archit was here. Yamaraj was here, and they had rented a whole house for them, on Reed Avenue. And I, was with the BBT. I wasn't with the BTG, but I also had a room in that house. The BBT paid some money for it, So that was the first place. We had to drive. It was about a mile away, and we drove to the temple, every day. But then after there was a big exodus in '92, where it's too expensive to live here. It's great, but it's very expensive. So many of them moved to Alachua, and Mukunda Maharaj moved to Washington. Anyway, it's like that. So where am I going to go? No point for me to go to Alachua. My main office is up in LA. So I moved right down the street here on Grand Avenue. And we would often walk. I was with Gangeya, who some of you may remember, and then with Dibigyan as a roommate. And so we would walk down the alley and come to the temple. Very short walk, And there was this one guy I would see, that there was a house right near where we were, toward the temple. And sometimes a special van would come.
and because he was in a wheelchair, this guy. And they would get him into the van and he would go off and do something, you know. And somehow I found out, I asked somebody about it, he was suffering the results of tremendous, I think, either cocaine or methamphetamine that he took too much, you know. And he had become crippled, and this was some rehabilitation thing, you know. And, you know, when I saw that, I was sorry for him. But I was also thankful that I had escaped from that association where that was going on. I was fortunate in that I never really took heavy drugs because they cause permanent damage. They can just mess up your brain, as you know. So, but someone who's starting to take them isn't thinking, yeah, I really want to mess up my brain. No, they're thinking, I'll get relief, I'll get pleasure, right? The whole idea is everyone else doing it. Here, take this, you know. It's such a dangerous association. So the devotee association is essential. You know, having to come in, that's why in the process of devotional service, adau shuddha tadaksaru sangha. If you get a little faith, then you come into the association of devotees. And that is your salvation if you really accept it and you allow the influence to take place. You know. Otherwise, the association is just horrendous. Whether it's direct, through the internet or whatever, the ethos in the Kali Yuga, and especially now, is just so destructive. It's horrible. So that's what Prabhupada was fighting against. Every preacher knows that he's trying to cause a revolution in consciousness in people, to give them the truth. The truth is so essential. Everybody's lying. The big lie is from Maya. Her whole job, thankless task, is to keep us deluded, right? Unless, as Prabhupada quotes the verse, Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya doratyaya. That's the first half of the verse, this is 7:14, I believe. That this divine energy of mine, it's divine, even though it's material, because it's connected to me. Gunamayi, composed of the material energy, of the material modes. Mama maya, my maya, duratyaya. It says very difficult to overcome. You know, it's impossible to overcome on your own. At least very difficult. In this translation, it says difficult. I'm pushing to add a very in there because Prabhupada has it in this word by words, and he has it in the purport. And the translation says difficult. Something that's difficult is something you can do if you try hard, right? It's difficult to get into Harvard, but if you try, you know, you get good grades, you can do it. If you try real hard, you can overcome material energy. No, you can't. Not on your own. Anyway, so, but one who surrenders unto me can easily cross beyond it, right? Prabhupada gives a wonderful analogy. If you're tied up, you know, you can't get out, you can't get free. You're tied really tightly, you know. Someone has to come who can cut your bonds. And that someone is the spiritual master, the acharya. Someone who not only has the knowledge, but has the purity and the, what do you want to call it, charisma, who can give you a little preliminary faith, though yet you believe it, or at least stay in the association. You see what I'm saying? That has to be there. Now Prabhupada, you know, was doing that personally, and he was incredible with that. He would go everywhere, and as soon, wherever he went, immediately there was somebody who was attracted, and he was able to plant seeds all over the world, in Africa and everywhere. At first, you know, he came, and he wasn't even planning to go back to India. His spiritual master told him to preach in the West, you know, and he was planning to stay in LA, the world headquarters. There was a lot of facility there. He had very good managers. He could just do his books, you know. But Krishna had other ideas. And he created a kind of a disturbance where some of his devotees, I'm not going to name names, they were intercepting his mail, you know, and they were trying to... And Prabhupada, at one point, he called up, I think, some of his trusted devotees, get me out of here. You got to get me out of here, you know. Now but he also later revealed that Lord Krishna himself was speaking to him and was asking him to leave and go back to India and do some preaching. But he was not, you know. So this arrangement came, and Prabhupada said he had to get away. So then he went, you know, back to India. And of course, he went back to cure himself at first, but that was very temporary in '67. I won't get into that. And then he saw that there was a good possibility for preaching. And then the real revolution came when Guru Raj Swami is writing that book, Dancing White Elephants. I think it was 1970, where he asked the temples to, assign a few devotees, good devotees, to come and join him in India. He was going to have a party, a Sankirtan party. He always had this idea of a world Sankirtan party. That was the three couples that went to UK famously and opened that up, met George Harrison, that whole thing. That was the beginning of it. But this was really serious. He was going to go around India, And then suddenly he was doing these pandals. I think the first one was in Delhi, right? Bombay? In Bombay, yeah. And Shyama Sundar was great. He was really imaginative in advertising. And he came up with this idea of big balloons, which they'd never seen. Big balloon says, here's the date, Hare Krishna, And they had thousands of people coming. And Prabhupada said, oh, there's a tremendous field here for preaching, And he went all over India with them. So what was going on there? Because of Prabhupada's authenticity, and because he was so brilliant, and take these white elephants, take these Americans, and everyone will be completely fascinated. What's going on? Who are these? I've never seen these white sadhus before. They was thinking, no, they can't possibly. They're just munches and yavanas. They'll never be able to take it up. But here they were, dancing and chanting, and effulgent. They were obviously sincere. So everyone was attracted. And the highlight, if you look look on YouTube, is Surat. They went to Surat. There were already devotees there, the whole town, right? And they came out. They were offering the devotees garlands as they walked through the thing, And they wanted to see Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada came out on the balcony, and they were all seeing him, Official day off, And they were there for quite a while, yeah. It was just tremendous. And you can imagine how enlivened the devotees were with that, So anyway, the potency, Krishna's potency working through the pure devotee can cause a revolution in consciousness. And that's what Prabhupada did, and it's still going on. So, but always the first lesson is always here, You're not the body, All the sufferings come from being embodied. You're a spirit soul, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss, originally. You've lost that nature because you rebelled against Krishna. You decided to try to go it on your own, and that was a big mistake, and now you've been suffering ever since time immemorial. Now end it all. Go back to Godhead and rejoin Krishna's pastimes. Prabhupada was like that. And in the beginning of the movement, he was working so hard to put out the Bhagavad Gita, the unabridged Bhagavad Gita. I have a picture, I'll bring it sometime, where Prabhupada has the first one from the printer, and he's holding it to his head, and there's one of these oceanic smiles on his face. Finally, he got to 1972 it came out, because he saw the potency of it. But then after, I think it was, well, actually it was before that. I think it was 70, with the big Rath Yatra in L.A. He realized that they're chanting and dancing, and but they don't really know much about Krishna, about the Leela. So he stopped the Bhagavatam itself and did the summary study of the Krishna book. It goes much faster. He doesn't have to, all the synonyms, everything. And so he stopped that, and then that was printed by Dinapant. And that Rath Yatra in San Francisco, 1970, it was huge. If you can see it on Following Srila Prabhupada, the Yadava put together. It's an incredible story. And you see thousands of hippies coming down with the carts, in Golden Gate Park. It's just amazing. And then Prabhupada is dancing at one point, right? I think that was it. So the Krishna book was in Japan. They were printing in Japan at that time. And Brahmananda, he was always dealing with the books. He was in charge of printing the books at that time. So he told the executives there, we have to have that book by the date, of the Rath Yatra. And they said, oh, it's impossible. Well, you have to do it. Otherwise, this will be real ramifications for our printing with you, because they're printing all the BTGs by the thousands also, every month. So he's in Japan, and he's waiting for the book. It's not ready. So he goes to the airport. He's getting on the plane. He's on the. In those days, they didn't have the thing. You had to walk up the stairs. They still have it sometimes. So he's on the tarmac, and he sees this big limousine drive onto the tarmac. I mean, these guys were big printers. It was a big business. They had the opportunity to do that. And out of the limousine come 6 or 8 big executives of the Dinapant, and they deliver a box of the first Krishna books. It's probably just volume 1, because there was 2 volumes, you know. But it's a fabulous book. You've seen it large with silver. I have some. I'll bring one time. And so he said, "Oh, thank you very much." You know, and he's walking, and the stewardess said, "Come on, you got to get on a plane. The plane has to leave." You know, so he goes up there. So he's sitting on there in the seat, you know, and he opens the box, you know, and here's this beautiful book with full color the plates, you know. So three or four sections of paintings, you know, a little bit crude because they didn't have, but it's ecstatic. So he's looking at the book, and the guy next to him says, "What is that?" Said, "Oh, this is a book about Krishna, Hare Krishna." You know, he said, "How much is it?" $10, which was a lot in 1970. I figure at least 2.5 times more. And so he bought a book. So he comes and he delivers the box to Prabhupada in San Francisco, you know. And he says, "Yeah, these are the books, but there was 20 books, but there's one missing." He said, "What happened to it?" He said, "I sold it on the plane." "Oh, very good, very good." And he said, "All these have to be sold at the you can imagine the devotees who have those precious books, you know." So, huh? Yeah, he was selling them too. Yeah, right. So, and Prabhupada would say, whenever a book is published, I feel like I've conquered a kingdom or, you know, a country. And of course, he was always happy to hear and eager to hear the scores, just like we read the scores. So, the point is that this basic philosophy that we have here, I call it, when I first read it, I said, "Oh, this is Hiranyakashipu Gita." You know, it's just regular philosophy. But what's interesting, you know, it's fascinating in that he's does he believe it? I mean, because he's big all this stuff, but he's just incensed, you know, that his brother was killed, you know, his brother's gone. So, but it's a basic philosophy. And of course, Prabhupada quotes a verse here that is one of my favorites of all time. Karanam guna sangasya. So Purushak, this is 13th chapter, text 22. Purushak pakati stohi, bhunkte pakati jangunan. Karanam guna sangasya, sadasad yoni janmasu. So the Purusha, the living entity who is actually Prakriti, right? We're para Prakriti, but we're acting like the enjoyer, so we're called the Purusha in that conditioned state. And situated in Prakriti, this body, which is material energy. Purushak Prakatisto hi, bhunkte Prakati Janganan. He's enjoying this bhunkte, but it can also mean experiencing. He's experiencing the effects of the modes of nature. Bhunkte Prakati Jangunan, which are generated from material energy. And then the key, then his agency comes in. Karanam gunasangosya. The cause of his good and bad bodies, which it says in next, good and bad birth, is how he's associating with that material energy. This is where the free will comes in. Now, of course, you have so many influences. If you're simply, you know, influenced by materialistic people, then you'll become an enjoyer of some kind, you know. But that it's up. But we are doing it as we associate. That determines a sadasad yoni janmasu, good or bad wombs, good or bad births that we have. So it's all up to us. That's the whole idea. And if we imbibe this knowledge, then that knowledge can give us the faith and the strength to act in such a way that will be purified. That's the whole point. Purified of what? Purified of this separatist enjoying mentality. They're competing with Krishna, which is just the source of all our suffering in this world. A little drop of pleasure and a whole ton of suffering, you know. That's really what sense gratification is all about. One of my favorite verses. It never gets old. Yehi sangsparjaja boga dukkha yonaya evate. Adyantavanta konteya nateshu ramatevada. And here's the brand new translation. Intelligent persons do not take part in the pleasures that are due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. O son of Kunti, such pleasures are the source of all misery, and they have a beginning and an end, and therefore the wise do not delight in them. So where do they get their pleasure? Previous verse. Bhaya sparsheshu asaktatma vindatyatma niyat sukham sab brahma yoga yuktatma sukham akshayam ashyate. Sukham akshayam, unbreakable happiness. So bhaya sparsheshu mean they reject this touch, this contact of the senses with the sense objects. Asaktatma, they're not attracted. Vindityatma niyat sukham, they're always enjoying the pleasure within. We have Krishna in our heart. Premanjanacharita bhakti vilochanena, says the Brahma in the Brahma Samhita. Those who are pure, they can always see Shyama Sundar within the heart, and you relate to him, within and without. So Yatsukam sab Brahma Yoga Yuktatma. They're always linked to Brahma, Supreme Brahman, Krishna, Parabrahman. Sab Brahma Yuktatma Sukham Akshayam Ashnate. And they enjoy unbreakable happiness. Just as Rishabdev says. If you perform divine austerity, you can purify yourself of this tendency to try to enjoy externally. And you come to the point of enjoying anantam, Brahma Saukyam Tvanantam, endless happiness. This ananta has two meanings. It doesn't end in time, and it's unlimited in space also. Has no barrier. So who would be the fool to say, well, that sounds like pretty far-fetched. I'm going to go with this temporary happiness that is sure to bring misery. Right? That's insanity. But that's materially illusioned. So we have a responsibility to come out of that illusion, act in the proper way so that we'll be purified, and then to try to give as much to others. They're all our brothers and sisters. Krishna is the Supreme Father, one big family. So if you see a brother or your sister or somebody close to you suffering like crazy, and you have the remedy to fix it, then you have the impetus. Any human being would try to give it to him. So that's the preaching movement. It really, and that is so pleasing to the whole parampara, to Lord Chaitanya, to Krishna. As he says right in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no one more dear to me than someone who preaches my message, who tries to deliver it sincerely to save others. So, come to the time. Any comments or questions on the Hiranyakashipu Gita? Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a minute.
Prabhu.
Yes.
So from reading Srila Prabhupada's purports, Srila Prabhupada has this wonderful phrase, and he sums up our attempt to enjoy the material energy.
What is it?
And it's 2 words, and it's fantastic. Simply defeat.
Simply defeat. I don't recall that, but I'm sure it's in
Yes,
there.
he uses it many times.
Yeah.
Simply defeat. And I always remember that because basically I'm a sense enjoyer. So whenever I'm running after, then I say, simply defeat.
Yeah.
You can't win materially.
No, it's impossible.
It's impossible.
Because the thing is, scientifically, just to step back, if you enjoy something in this world, and we've all had that opportunity, then it plants a physically even in your brain the desire to enjoy it again. You recall how you enjoyed it. This is the whole principle of advertising, as I explained. Try to plant a desire seed in your mind so that you'll buy their product and enjoy it and get hooked, right? That's it. So that's everything. All these pleasures are addictive, whatever we enjoy in this material, and that addiction affects our mind. You lose your discrimination. It's right there, the ayato vishayan pungsa. So it's certainly defeat, and that the last phase of it is what is it? Kroda vijayate, kroda bhavati sammohat, sammohat smriti, vibhramat smriti brangshad, buddhinashat panashati. That your memory is destroyed by all of this enjoyment. You forget. You forget that last time you did it, you suffered, but it tastes so good. Let me try it again. Smriti brangshad, you lose your memory. Smriti buddhinash, and then the intelligence is destroyed. The intelligence is destroyed. You're finished. You fall down in the material pool. So the whole thing is the intelligence. This is what differentiates us from the animals. So if we use our intelligence properly, and hear the transcendental sound of the holy name and the pure words coming from the lips of the pure devotee. That's basically the hearing. Then we can get the strength to say no to the senses, to say no. But not just no. Yes. Let me not go. Roam the aisles of Ralph's looking for some new snack, or they have a whole aisle now just with alcoholic beverages. It's unbelievable. They didn't have that when I was a kid. Not in the grocery store. But anyway, you know, let me taste some prasadam. You know, in other words, I remember that wonderful feast I had once, you know, when I was a kid at the Hare Krishnas. Let me go there and try that again. Do they still have that? You know? In other words, this is the choice. Prabhupada has given us a choice. Krishna gives us a choice by coming and manifesting his Leela and attracting us, you know. So, but we have to be receptive to it. Otherwise, that becomes, you know, we reject that and we stay in the bondage. But thank you for that. It's simply defeat. That's what he says in that verse, you know, that if you don't resist the temptation to keep trying to enjoy the senses, then your whole human life will be defeated, will be wasted and lost, you know. And so that's a theme throughout our books. So and that's the wonderful thing about Lord Chaitanya's movement is that if you really just let go and you join in the kirtan and of course the prasadam, then you're going to enjoy. It's such an enjoyable theme. You probably meet people on the street. I mean, you know, who, yes, I remember, you're Hare Krishna? Yeah, I used to go to the temple back in the 70s. That was such a nice experience. You know, remind them of that. Thank you for that. Okay, we have one more here, and then we'll have to go.
Thank you so for the class. In continue this question, you already mentioned that quote Krishna that he said, we can surrender to me, then you can defeat material nature. Or no, be free from
material.
Yes,
yeah, that's in Bhagavad
and
Gita.
what means surrender to Krishna? Please explain.
Okay, that's a big question. Basically, it means being willing to subordinate your own desires for the desires of Krishna. That's the way it begins. And how do I know what they are? Okay, from the spiritual master, from Bhagavad Gita. Think of me. That's the first aspect, the most essential aspect of surrender. Think of me. Well, how do I think of you? You know? Well, he has so many answers in the Bhagavad Gita. Well, you can meditate on me, you know. You can talk about me. He mentions that in the 10th chapter, the verses I quoted. Bodhiyantak parasparam, this is, you know, glorifying me. And satatam kirtayanto mam. Prabhupada would quote that verse. Oh, there it is, you know. Because the professors in the college, they were wondering, I don't see anything like that in the Bhagavad Gita. You know, how are you practicing yoga? He said, oh, here it is. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Yatantasthadra. The Mahatmas are always chanting my glories. They're always doing kirtan. So in this age, surrender means to, first of all, to pick up the beads or just to come to the temple and chant Hare Krishna. Because at least for that time, you know, you're hearing, you're participating, your mind is on Krishna. But it all begins with thinking of Krishna. And if you think of Krishna, you're going to hear that, you know, here's what he wants you to do. So there's also negative things you have to give up. And oftentimes that's the hardest thing because people are so attached. We're so attached. But that's what it means. It means to follow the instructions of the guru, you know, of the acharya or the representative of the acharya, the books certainly. And that's the beginning of surrender. You know, full surrender is down the road, but that's how you begin the process of surrender. You don't do, you know, all the stuff that you've been doing, and you give at least some time to reading this, associating, maybe chanting Hare Krishna. It's a big thing to pick up those beads and start chanting, because it goes very deep and it affects you. Because you have to experience some pleasure, you know, and some relief, you know, from all the worry and the anxiety and everything. It's very deep. So that's the multifaceted things of surrender. But it's all kinds of ways of thinking of Krishna and serving Krishna's mission, his desires. And let us pray that we can come to that point of full surrender. Every moment. All right, let me end with a nice little verse for you. A prayer. It's all M's. Listen, every word begins with M. This is a tour de force of alliteration. Madhudesha madhudi mayamadava mudadi mattalika mugdha mama manana mohana madama manaso maha moham. O Master of Mathura, lovely Lord of Goddess Shri, who places maddening melodies upon your Murali, O Cupid's charmer, please redeem a life till now misspent. by joyfully destroying my extreme bewilderment. Hare Krishna. You're welcome.